It is my great honor now to introduce the ATTA's CEO, Mr. Shannon Stowell, as our closing keynote speaker. He will no doubt provide some timely insights on the topic of survival as we bring the summit to a close for 2021.
Thank you, Ken-san, for that wonderful introduction. And I sure miss you, my friend. I look forward to the next time that we're together in person. I also want to express my deep gratitude to the Japanese and Hokkaido teams that have worked so hard over the last years to get to this moment, to make this happen. Of course, we wish we were in person, but here we are, and thank you for making this virtual event a success. And then, of course, I want to thank my team and our advisors for the tireless work our team has done over the last year plus in getting this off the ground. It's been very difficult. And not only this project, but dozens of others as we continue to move forward as an association. So thank you, team, from the bottom of my heart. You're the best. So here we are today. We're in the Salida, Colorado area, and behind me is the Arkansas River, one of the best rafting and kayaking rivers in the nation. And so happy to be here. And behind that, off in the distance a little bit, is a place called Ute Trail. We're on the historical lands of the Ute Indian tribe and others, but the Utes were well known for coming from this valley and up to the high country as they followed the game for their sustenance. So that's the setting for the place that I'm standing today, which I have to say is really bringing a sense of connection and calm. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. I know that you have a lot to do, and I know that people are also really tired of digital and tired of being online. So I am honored that you're either at the summit right now or listening to this after the summit. So I very much appreciate that. I mean, we're looking at more than 550 days in a row of stressful pandemic living. So good on you for being here. Where to even start? I guess I'd like to start with acknowledging the disappointment that I'm here and you're there and we're not together. It's a reality that we're just having to deal with. We should be in Hokkaido, Japan right now, enjoying incredible food and culture. And last year, we would have been doing this in Australia. So clearly, this is something that we're all looking forward to doing when we can get back together again. The trial we've been forced to has been emotionally backbreaking for many of us, for many in the industry, for many people worldwide, but especially the travel industry. So I want to acknowledge that. So thank you for caring about this community and being a part. The title of my talk today is Survival, and I'd like to share a little bit of the journey that I've walked during this pandemic. For my wife, Gabby, and me, the low point was absolutely March 28th, 2020, when our team was shocked by the news of the loss of our dear colleague, Alia, to COVID. Nothing in this pandemic compares to the loss of human life, of our friends and our family. And I know some of you have actually recovered from COVID and are in a long haul mode. And I just want to say to all of you who experienced loss this last year, blessings on you for the extra weight and pain that you've had to endure on top of everything else. For Gabby and me, it became clear that our current situation at the time was no longer economically sustainable. So we sold our home in Washington State. I'd lived in Washington for 34 years and Gabby for 10. And we moved to a small off-grid cabin in Colorado in the mountains. 700 square feet, which is about 65 square meters, and no power and no running water. There are no services there and only 7 other people that even live in what I guess you could call a mountain village. We figured if we're gonna rough it, let's really go for it. So we end up spending 9 months there at about 3,000 meter altitude through the hard Colorado winter. For ATTA, that low moment carried into the month of April as we staggered around trying to figure out what to do. We couldn't do our in-person events, no in-person anything. And travel is such a human business. We have to know each other and trust each other to do our work. At ATTA, our crisis continued to plunge deeper as our bank failed us at the moment where we needed them most, and we had a very scary time figuring out what to do. And we did what a lot of you did. We made all the hard decisions, all the cuts, all the changes, and it was incredibly painful, as I know many of you know firsthand. So this year's theme is Kyosei, a Japanese concept that roughly translates as being in harmony with nature, which I think resonates with this audience, with this group of people. Gabby and I got to experience Kyosei firsthand nearly every day when we were doing our mountain sojourn. What we learned, which would probably not surprise people in this nature-loving audience, is that nature is boss, humans need help, and we can live on a lot less than we think we can. That was really the essence of the lesson that we learned. Harmony with nature is a concept which sometimes gets caramelized into a sweet, feel-good condition, complete with rainbows and unicorns and flowers and butterflies. That's only one side of the coin. Nature can be brutal, and while sometimes inspiring, beautiful, and grand, it can also force us to acknowledge our place in the universe, that we're not the ones in charge of everything, that there's something bigger than us as humans, and that we should be good stewards of what we have, embrace adaptation, and lean into true community with others if we want to survive and then eventually thrive. Again, that was the essence of our lesson. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it was like to live up in that cabin for those 9 months. We had to scrounge water from numerous sources, sometimes from one of our neighbors if the sun hit his tap just right for long enough. Sometimes we would melt snow or gather it from other locations. That was probably the most difficult part. We also kept our food in an ice box where we would gather snow and put snow in there to keep the food cold, or as the snow melted, we would put it back out at night to turn back into ice and just keep recycling. Water really was the hardest issue because every drop has to be carried physically, sometimes multiple times, and used and preserved and reused whenever possible. So the average American uses about 85 gallons of water per day, and we got our usage down to about 8, which is still abundant for some places in the world. We picked up funny habits too, like sharing one juice glass in the morning at breakfast, because that was one less glass to wash and one less bit of water we had to carry and find. So harmony with nature. The glorious part was hiking in snowy and dry weather nearly every day, seeing elk, bobcat, deer, raptors, fox, and saw signs of big cats and bear. We hiked until our legs could take us a lot farther than they used to. We explored high places in total silence and watched starry or snowy nights from the porch. What we learned from living as close to nature as we did is that it's both difficult and beautiful simultaneously. Harmony with nature sometimes looks like submission. After a few months, I had developed chainsaw elbow, a painful condition from too much hauling water and chopping and dropping trees for wood. I still haven't shaken that. Our septic system froze. I fell on a frozen lake on New Year's Eve and limped for about 6 months. We dealt with dead car batteries, trudged through the snow to high places to get a cell signal, and worked out of the car, sometimes poaching one other cabin's Wi-Fi when it worked to continue to do the work of ATTA. At one point, Gabby used hot water bottles under her computer as she sat in a lawn chair in 10 inches of snow to work on a 9,000-foot ridge. You know, a standard adventure office. We got into a life-threatening situation once on a dirt road. We'd traversed this high mountain pass in December, and as it was January, I figured we could do a repeat of that and that we would just be careful and turn around if we needed to. And it's a much more beautiful and rugged route. The last time we had driven it, a herd of elk ran alongside our vehicle as we drove through the snow. At first, the snow was 2 or so inches deep, and then the path parted, one towards some summer cabins and ranches, and suddenly we were breaking track. We were breaking snow. Started getting a little more nervous, but it was still fairly light. Then suddenly, with no warning, we just flew off the road to the side into about 3 feet of snow, and we're stuck. Impossibly stuck. I had an avalanche snow shovel and got it out, but the problem was the hot car and the weight of it settled into the snow and created an ice pillar. And by the time I dug all the tires out, we were on an impossible pillar of ice and could not move. It had gotten dark. I was soaked with sweat. It was below freezing, and we had no cell coverage, and we got nervous. I put my dry but dirty clothes on that were still in the car. We gathered all our gear and started hiking out. We got up to a high point and called emergency services, and they sent us to a tow truck company. The tow truck company said, "We can't come and get you unless you give us a credit card number." So I got my credit card out, and then we lost service. That was it. Couldn't get service again. But the lady did tell us after I sent her the GPS pin that we were 40 kilometers from civilization. Now we were really worried. So we started walking back with no other real option other than to try to find a ranch and kick in the door or break a window and make reparations later. When just then the night sky was pierced by 2 headlights, the tow truck driver came for us. So thankfully, after 10 tries, he did get our vehicle out and we got unstuck. The relief that we felt after that was immense, and I was also very shaken by how close we had come to disaster. Not long after, another incident occurred that kind of took me to the bottom. There was a community well that had finally gotten fixed after an accident the previous winter, and I decided to figure out how to use it. I made one small mistake in the process of shutting the well off, and the pipe froze, the community well pipe. I was embarrassed and frustrated. I got advice from some old timers and did try many different things to thaw it before the freeze went too deep. In that process, I stood up quickly without looking and hit my face on a jutting board so hard I almost knocked out my front teeth. Reeling backwards with blood streaming down my face, I got in the car with one hand covering my mouth and the other driving. Got back to the cabin and went inside, and Gabby asked, "Who punched you?" I guess Pachamama punched me, and she has a really wicked right hook. So Mother Nature had won. I'd had it. I was beaten. I sat dejectedly in a chair with ice on my face, and I felt completely defeated. The pandemic had won. Winter had won. I had lost. Gabby and I talked about giving up and moving to town, declaring nature the decisive winner. And then some spark of oxygen blew deep inside on my rage, and my emotion, imagining giving up, swept through me. Absolutely not. I'm not giving up. We will do this. We will get through. Failure and defeat is not an option. So with a fragile determination, I set about trying to get on top of this failure and acceptance attitude. We made plans that night to go to a friend's bonfire, even though it looked like I had kissed a moving truck. The next day, I talked to 2 of the tough guys that live in town and got unintentionally vulnerable with them about what had happened and how beaten I felt by it. They both dropped their tough guy characters and actually were very sympathetic and say, "Yeah, we've all gotten our asses kicked up here. This is what happens up here. It is hard, and the only way to learn is to make those mistakes." And as we stood there and commiserated, I felt hope and community standing on that platform of determination, kind of like we do with each other with the ATTA network. You can feel that life coming back when you connect with somebody else. It all seemed possible again. We could do this. We weren't alone. And in fact, that community has rallied around each other many times before and since then, because there's no one else there to save us. There's no government. There's no officials up there. We're on our own. So we have to help each other. And that's really the situation that we are all in now as a community globally, the adventure travel community. So Gabby and I did make it through the winter. And although we did move to town in the summer because working up there was just too hard as things started to come back to some sense of life, we retain a deep love for the place and go back every chance we get. As hard a boss as nature can be, it's also incredibly moving and special and calls us constantly. Emotionally and mentally, everyone, especially the travel community, has been deeply stressed these last 500 plus days. And I can tell you that beyond immediate friends and family, it's been this community that has also been a huge force for sustenance, emotional sustenance, for me personally, for Gabby, for our team, and I know for many of you too. Once we acknowledge our losses, we were motivated to continue to do what we can with this community of adventure travel professionals who care about the right things. And adventure travel will come back. It'll come back strong. I see everywhere in our community that people are talking about steps to build back more thoughtfully. Comments like, do I really want to grow ever bigger when I can again? Or do I want to grow to the point where I enjoy the job, where I enjoy the work? Or let's figure out a better way to measure economic impact than just arrivals. Initiatives around sustainability, climate action, and inclusivity dot the landscape. Tomorrow's air is gathering steam in spite of an incredibly difficult economic environment. I think many of us have paid attention to Mother Nature's recent lessons about humans and consumption, and while much of it was shut off to us. I will say that reading some of the major travel publications lately has been a bit depressing. It feels as though many in travel not only didn't learn any important and obvious lessons from the pandemic, it feels like mass travel cannot wait to disgorge itself upon the earth again. Screw those clean waterways and skies. I want my vacation, and I deserve it, especially because I've been cooped up all this time. I mean, could we hold a more entitled attitude as humans? Revenge travel, really? Could we be more blind to the realities that COVID relayed to us? This is why you matter. This is why we matter as a community. The world needs you in your role, whether you're a tour operator, journalist, destination reps, travel specialist, lodging professional, content creator. Everybody in the industry is key for us to come back better. The world needs sustainable adventure travel. If you're struggling today, trying to decide whether to even stay in this business, please hang in there. This community needs every one of us. Acknowledge the loss, accept the unknown, fail, decide to be determined. It can be shaky at first, but then connect with people, the people who spark your inspiration, your desire to get back on this horse. We have some really interesting opportunities in front of us as an industry, while admittedly, we're still facing some hard roads, aren't we? The gap between the recovery of adventure travel and the rest of travel is going to be real. This is good for us. This is our time to fill that gap as much as possible with good and responsible travel experiences, marketing, and storytelling. We can start affecting the narrative around travel, that it is our privilege and not our right, and that we should offer experiences and teach travelers how it should be done. Also, a lot of newcomers are testing the adventure travel waters. On an ATTA call the other day with members from Brazil to India to the US, a really interesting trend was revealed by multiple destinations. We're hearing that a totally new kind of customer is showing up. They're bringing boom boxes to places like this. They're coming to campgrounds and lodges, and they're not necessarily booking the rafting or the climbing or the safaris. They have different demands than the classic adventure traveler, but they're showing up. Obviously, there will be challenges here, but it's also an opportunity for us to convert people away from cruise, mall, and casino to adventure travel. How do we have real conversations with those travelers to cause change for the better? One of the best pieces of news I've seen comes from the World Bank and the WTTC, who put out a report that shows adventure travel, nature-based travel, and ecotourism, they lumped all those together, are going to be the most important sector for recovery in travel compared to pre-COVID-19 levels. Just behind that was domestic tourism, wellness and spa, and cultural tourism. This bodes well for us, doesn't it? We've always known how important our sector is to the world of travel, to be a conscience and to be a flag bearer for doing it right. But now it is being openly acknowledged by the global institutions. My friends, hang in there. We have a future. You have a future. We will see each other soon. We're all desperate for that. We're an ecosystem and need everyone to be at the table. Are you the one at the bottom? Be vulnerable and ask for help. Are you doing all right? Reach out and help somebody else. We need each other more than ever. Symbiosis, Hyosei, harmony with nature and each other in the realest sense. I love this community, and this time apart has been beyond painful for all of us. I'd like to invoke a Brazilian Portuguese term that also does not have a clean translation to English, but essentially is a deep melancholy and longing for someone that you miss. So I want to tell you, from me personally and also from our team, saudades. Saudades. We'll see you soon.